My promotion party had just ended when Amanda looked me straight in the eye and said, "I've outgrown this marriage, Eric. I need someone who understands ambition." 2 hours later, she moved into her boss's penthouse downtown. After 15 years of marriage, after I supported her through law school, after I turned down multiple coaching offers just so she could stay at her firm, I stood in the driveway as she drove away in the Lexus I paid for, and I didn't say a word. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I already knew how this would end. Her boss, Charles Whitman, had a history: 2 failed marriages, 3 sexual harassment settlements swept under the rug. And Amanda thought she was different. She thought she won. What she didn't expect was what I'd been quietly preparing long before she packed her bags. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you built your entire life around? If it were you, what would you do next? Let me know in the comments. And if you're watching this from Nashville, Tennessee like me, tell me where you're tuning in from. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when you walk away with your dignity and come back with justice. You're listening to Revenge with Max. Stay with me. My name is Eric Foster. I'm 43 years old, a high school football coach in Nashville, Tennessee. And for 15 years, I thought I had a solid marriage. Amanda and I met during college. She was this driven, sharp-minded pre-law student who seemed to already have her life mapped out. Me? I was the guy who could rally a team of teenagers into champions. We were opposites in a way, but it worked. We got married a year after graduation. Amanda started law school, and I started teaching and coaching at a local high school. Money was tight, but we made it work. I picked up summer camps and weekend clinics to cover bills, groceries, tuition. I never once complained. I was proud of her. When she graduated, I surprised her with a framed copy of her bar exam results. She cried, said she couldn't have done it without me. We bought a modest house on the east side of town. Nothing fancy, but it had a small backyard where we planned to build a family someday. That dream never came. Amanda always said, "Let's wait until the firm settles down." Then it was, "Maybe next year. I want to make partner first." So I waited, year after year. Meanwhile, I turned down 2 big coaching offers from schools out of state, offers that would have doubled my salary. But moving would have meant Amanda losing her place at the firm. So I stayed. She made the career moves. I built the foundation. Eventually, Amanda made partner. Overnight, our lifestyle changed. She started wearing designer labels, bought a new car, started attending black tie events with colleagues. I supported it. I was proud. I thought we were a team. But something shifted. She started working late more often, came home smelling like whiskey and cologne that wasn't mine. She said it was stress. I believed her. Or maybe I just didn't want to believe anything else. I noticed the name Charles Whitman come up more and more in her conversations. Managing partner at the firm, big client base, wealthy, twice divorced. Known for mentoring the promising ones. Amanda started quoting him at dinner. "Charles says this. Charles recommends that." I made a joke once, called him her second husband. She didn't laugh. Looking back, the signs were all there. The text messages she never let me see. The sudden urge to find herself through solo weekends in Atlanta. The change in how she spoke to me, like I was a placeholder for a life she'd already outgrown. But I held on, not out of desperation, out of loyalty. I'd invested everything into this marriage. Sacrificed real opportunities so she could rise. I thought that meant something. Turns out, it didn't. The day she left was quiet, clinical, like a business transaction. She packed her things into 3 suitcases and a garment bag. Told me, "This is better for both of us." Then she handed me a settlement draft, already signed on her end. "You keep the house, I'll take the retirement funds and the stocks." "It's fair," she said, like it was a negotiation. Like we were 2 strangers dividing up office furniture. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded and said, "I hope you're right." She left, and I was alone, but not broken. Because what Amanda didn't know was that I'd been watching everything, quietly, carefully, and I had no intention of walking away with nothing. Not after 15 years. Not after everything I gave up to build her empire. Because there's a law in Tennessee that says, a spouse who supports the other through career advancement is entitled to more than just leftovers. And I knew just the person who could help me make that law count. She thought she won. She thought she left me behind. but she hadn't seen my next play. Not yet. The day after Amanda moved out, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney named Grace Ellison. I'd found her through a friend on the school board, said she specialized in high-asset cases and didn't lose often. When I walked into her office, she looked over my file and smiled. "You've been very generous, Coach Foster," she said, flipping through Amanda's proposed settlement. "Too generous. I'm not looking for revenge," I told her. "I just want what's fair." Grace leaned back in her chair. "Good. Because under Tennessee law, fair means a lot more than what she's offering. You supported her career. You made sacrifices. That has weight." She asked me to gather every document I had: tax records, joint accounts, investment portfolios, Amanda's bonus structures, and anything else that showed a financial timeline. It took me 2 days to put it together, and that's when Grace found it. Amanda had been slowly siphoning money from our joint investment accounts for months, moving it into a private brokerage she opened under her maiden name. The transfers were small enough to avoid red flags, but over time, she had moved close to $180,000 out of our shared assets. "She was preparing for this long before she told you," Grace said. "This wasn't impulsive. This was planned." The realization hit harder than I expected, not because of the money, but because she'd been pretending, smiling, making dinner, saying "love you" on her way out the door, while quietly laying the groundwork to disappear. We filed a motion to freeze the remaining assets. Amanda's lawyer, some big shot from her firm, called mine within hours. They tried to play it cool, claiming the transfers were routine. Grace didn't flinch. "Routine doesn't mean legal," she told them. That week, Amanda's tone shifted. She sent me a text, cold but vaguely conciliatory. "We can still do this quietly, Eric. You don't need to make a scene." I didn't respond, because while she was worried about scenes, I was thinking about patterns, and one name kept coming up: Charles Whitman. I started asking around, quietly. One of my former players' mothers worked part-time at the law firm's admin department. She told me Charles had a reputation. He dated junior partners, used his influence to fast-track their careers, and then discarded them when the excitement wore off. 2 women had quietly left the firm within the last 3 years. No exit interviews, no goodbyes, just vanished. Amanda was the third. Meanwhile, I kept showing up to practice. I kept coaching the boys. We were 2 games away from playoffs. The job gave me focus. The kids gave me peace. But rumors had started spreading. Amanda wasn't exactly discreet. Her social circle was buzzing. Cocktail parties, late-night dinners, charity events with Charles at her side. And in those circles, I became the footnote, the coach ex-husband, the nice guy who couldn't keep up. Somehow, I became the joke. Amanda had even started telling people we grew apart because I lacked ambition. That part stung, because no one knew how many opportunities I'd walked away from for her. But I stayed silent. I didn't counter her narrative. I didn't post on Facebook. I didn't beg anyone to take my side. Instead, I focused on something else. My attorney uncovered an even bigger issue. Amanda's private retirement accounts, some of which had been funded with money earned during our marriage, had never been disclosed in the original settlement draft. That was a serious violation. And under state law, hiding marital assets, especially intentionally, could void the entire agreement and entitle the other spouse to a much larger portion. When Grace presented this to Amanda's team, they stalled, delayed hearings, asked for extensions. I wasn't surprised. They knew they were losing ground, but I still hadn't said a word publicly, and I wasn't planning to, because people like Amanda, people like Charles, never expect the quiet ones to be dangerous. They rely on noise to win battles. I relied on facts. While she posed for fundraisers, I gathered evidence. While she laughed in penthouses, I prepared my case. While she moved forward like nothing could touch her, she didn't realize the foundation she stood on was starting to crack. And all I had to do was let the truth do its job. 6 weeks into the divorce proceedings, Amanda's legal team tried to force a private mediation. On paper, it sounded like a reasonable compromise. Settle things quietly, avoid court. But Grace wasn't buying it. "This isn't about resolution," she told me. "It's about containment. They know if this goes in front of a judge, they'll lose more than money." I nodded. "So we don't settle." And that was the moment everything shifted. Until then, Amanda still believed I'd back down, that I'd roll over, sign the papers, take the house, and disappear like an old chapter in a new book. But I wasn't playing the part she'd written for me. The next week, we filed a motion to compel full financial disclosure, including communications between Amanda and Charles regarding joint investments, firm compensation structures, and asset transfers. Grace even subpoenaed emails from her company laptop, citing marital finance concerns. Amanda's mask cracked. Her attorney called Grace the next morning, furious. "You're weaponizing his role as a husband to dig through corporate records." "No," Grace replied. "We're protecting his legal share in a 15-year partnership built on sacrifice." 3 days later, Amanda came to my front door. Not with fury, not with shame, with strategy. She wore a soft expression, the kind she used when trying to steer a conversation. "Eric," she said, "we don't have to do this." I didn't invite her in. She glanced at the house, the one I'd rebuilt after a storm, nearly took our roof off 5 years ago. "You don't want this dragged through court. I'm not your enemy." I leaned against the doorframe. "Then why'd you spend months hiding accounts in your maiden name?" She hesitated, just a second too long. "It was just temporary. You were going to move on, and you did." She looked down. "Charles's legal team thinks this is becoming a distraction. They want me to make this go away." There it was, the truth. She wasn't here for peace. She was here because her new life was starting to crack. The firm had launched a quiet internal review. Rumors swirled that Charles's relationship history with junior partners, now including Amanda, was attracting attention from senior leadership. Then came the biggest blow. Amanda had been promised lead counsel on a major case for one of the firm's top clients, but a week before filing, she was pulled from it with no explanation, replaced, silently. That kind of decision doesn't come from personal reasons. It comes from liability. And Amanda, whether she knew it or not, had become one. Meanwhile, the court granted our motion for forensic accounting. When the report came in, Grace called me after hours. "Eric, are you sitting down?" The total hidden assets Amanda had funneled into side accounts? Over $300,000. Half of it invested in speculative tech startups connected to Charles's private fund. None of it disclosed. "This isn't just breach of transparency," Grace said. "This is marital fraud." And under state law, that meant we could reopen everything, not just divide the assets, but claim punitive compensation. That night, I sat on the porch with a notebook in my lap. I wasn't writing a speech. I wasn't crafting a revenge fantasy. I was mapping out the rest of my life, one that no longer revolved around someone else's ambition. The old me, the version that believed sacrifice guaranteed loyalty, was gone. Amanda had made her choice, but choices have consequences. And now, for the first time since she walked out, she finally realized something she never saw coming. I wasn't the one being left behind. She was the one losing everything, quietly, legally, permanently. And I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just getting started. From that point forward, every move was deliberate. Grace and her team filed a revised claim that not only sought equitable distribution of the marital estate, but also damages for concealment of community assets. In simpler terms, we weren't just asking for my half. We were asking for more than half. Amanda's team went on the defensive, fast. Her firm's leadership, already nervous about the optics surrounding her relationship with Charles, started backing away. She was quietly excluded from several high-profile meetings. Her name disappeared from the internal list of rising partners scheduled for corporate retreats. Even Charles, the man she left me for, began putting distance between them. I didn't have to make any public statements. I didn't need to retaliate. The truth was doing all the work for me. But I wasn't finished. During this time, I'd also been working on something that had nothing to do with Amanda, or Charles, or the firm. I took a portion of my savings, what little I had left untouched, and launched a scholarship fund at my school. I called it the Foster Foundation. It would award full college prep support to student athletes from single-parent homes. Kids who, like many on my team, were doing their best with very little. I didn't tell anyone where the money came from. I just let the counselor announce it one morning in homeroom. The look on my players' faces, that quiet mix of confusion and hope, meant more to me than any courtroom victory ever could. While Amanda tried to salvage her image, I was rebuilding my purpose. And then, the final hearing date was confirmed. The courtroom was small, sterile. Just me, Grace, Amanda, and her attorneys seated across from us. Amanda looked different, tired, smaller somehow. Her usual sharpness had dulled. She wouldn't look at me. The judge reviewed the forensic report, the hidden assets, the concealed transfers, the co-mingled investments with her new partner. He paused after reading the last page. "Mrs. Foster," he said, "your behavior demonstrates a pattern of intentional financial misconduct. Given the extent of these violations, this court finds the original settlement proposal void." Amanda shifted in her seat. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the court awards Mr. Foster 65% of the marital estate, including restitution for the concealed funds, plus interest." Amanda's attorney leaned in, whispering something. She still wouldn't look at me. Outside the courtroom, Grace turned to me and smiled. "That's about as clean a win as you'll ever get." But for me, it wasn't about the percentage. It wasn't about taking more than my share. It was about being recognized. I'd given my time, my future, my loyalty to a marriage built on the promise of shared success. Amanda had used that foundation as a springboard, then walked away the moment she reached higher ground. But the truth is, her success was never built alone. And now, the law agreed. That night, I got home to find a handwritten letter in my mailbox. It was from Amanda, 3 pages long, apologies, justifications, nostalgia, regret. Near the end, she wrote, "I thought you wouldn't fight. I thought you'd walk away like always. But maybe I never really saw you." I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond, because the old version of me, the one who would have held out hope for reconciliation or even just peace, was gone. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about everything I still had, and everything I was building now. The local paper ran a small piece about the scholarship fund the following week. Nothing flashy, just a headline, "Local coach turns divorce settlement into hope for students." Amanda probably read it. So did Charles. They'd gone quiet lately. Maybe they were still together. Maybe not. But one thing was certain. She didn't get the last word. I did. And I didn't have to raise my voice once. About a month after the final ruling, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was an associate from Amanda's firm. "I'm calling off the record," he said. "Thought you should know, Charles Whitman stepped down yesterday. Internal investigation finally caught up to him." Apparently, the review that had started quietly escalated fast after the court documents from our case circulated through legal circles. Those hidden assets? They weren't just personal. Several involved shell accounts and insider recommendations he'd funneled through Amanda and others. It wasn't just a relationship scandal anymore. It was an ethics disaster. Amanda wasn't fired, but she was reassigned, effectively sidelined. No clients, no cases, no firm lunches, just a corner office with nothing but silence in it. And Charles, gone, swept out before his name dragged the whole place down. Rumor was he'd relocated to the Bahamas. Amanda sent one more email, short, no greeting, no signature. "You won. I hope it was worth it." I didn't reply because she still didn't get it. This wasn't about winning. This was about survival, about reclaiming the pieces of myself I'd handed over for 15 years, one compromise at a time. By now, word had spread in town. Parents who once whispered behind my back started thanking me after games. Teachers dropped by my office with a pat on the shoulder. Even the principal, who once hinted I should take some personal days during the worst of it, now asked if I'd consider helping develop a leadership program for at-risk boys. That same week, something else happened. A letter arrived from the state athletic board. I'd been nominated for Coach of the Year, not because of our record, though we made it to the semifinals that season, but because of how I'd led with grace under public pressure and turned adversity into mentorship. Funny how people only see the quiet ones after the noise dies down. But the real moment that got to me, it happened on a Friday afternoon. I was walking off the field when one of my players, Jalen, a senior I'd been mentoring since his freshman year, ran up to me. He held out a folded letter. "I got in," he said. "Full ride, University of Georgia." I opened the letter, read it twice. The scholarship wasn't just academic. It had a community service component. Turns out Jalen had been volunteering at the Foster Foundation after school, mentoring middle schoolers. "I wanted to pay it forward," he said. I looked at that kid, same age I was when I first thought love alone could carry a marriage, and I smiled. "You already have," I told him. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of tea. The fall air was cool, quiet, peaceful. Amanda's house downtown had gone up for sale the week before. The penthouse, the one she moved into with Charles. I heard she was looking at condos now, smaller, farther out. Funny, isn't it? She left because she thought I couldn't keep up. But in the end, I didn't fall behind. She just ran ahead, in the wrong direction. And when it all came crashing down, I was still standing, stronger, clearer, free. Not because I got money, not because the court agreed with me, but because I never let bitterness eat me alive. I didn't need revenge in the way she expected. I didn't torch her world. I just built my own. And in doing so, I showed her, and myself, something she never anticipated. That being underestimated is often the greatest advantage of all. It's been 9 months since the divorce was finalized. Amanda and I haven't spoken since that last email. The house is quieter now, but it doesn't feel empty. I've repainted the kitchen, refinished the deck out back, rebuilt the fence I kept putting off when things were busy. Turns out, healing doesn't always come from time. Sometimes it comes from action. The Foster Foundation has grown faster than I expected. We've already supported 12 students. 3 of them will be the first in their family to attend college. And next fall, we're expanding into 2 more high schools across Davidson County. I never planned to become the face of anything. I'm not a speaker. I don't write mission statements. But when I sit in those community meetings and see parents nodding, kids asking real questions about their future, it reminds me why I held the line, why I didn't break. As for Amanda, last I heard, she's working with a boutique firm now, lower profile, fewer clients. She's still smart, still ambitious. But the shine around her has faded. No more headlines, no more gala invites, no more Charles. From what I'm told, he cut contact completely after his resignation. That world Amanda chased, the one she thought she deserved more than me, it turned out to be built on sand. Meanwhile, I've found something real. I'm seeing someone now, a pediatrician named Lauren. We met at a school fundraiser, one I almost skipped. She's calm, grounded, laughs easily. She doesn't care about power lunches or rooftop parties. She asks how practice went. Brings Gatorade to games. She sees me, and I see her, not as a replacement, but as proof that love rooted in respect is still possible. If there's anything I've learned from all of this, it's this. Sometimes the people who walk away from you are doing you the biggest favor of your life. They reveal what they value. They free you to rediscover what you do. I didn't lose Amanda. I lost the illusion of loyalty. And in that loss, I found myself. So, if you've ever been betrayed, written off, or left behind, don't let it define you. Let it sharpen you. Let it remind you of your worth, because in the end, quiet strength always outlasts loud betrayal. And living well, that's the most precise form of justice there is. What did you think of this story? If you were in Eric's shoes, how would you have handled it? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with Max so you never miss a powerful new karma story. Every single day.